may want to know something crazy. 27 years ago, a sheep was born that changed the world forever. And if it hadn't been for that, we might not exist today. Let me explain. What made her so special, though, wasn't her looks or her wool color or even her mom. You see, she was the first mammal to ever be successfully cloned. But don't worry, this isn't one of those clickbait videos. She didn't just get photocopied and then come out looking exactly the same as her mom. That would be pretty crazy if that happened. She was the first mammal to ever be cloned from an adult somatic cell. Well, according to Ian Wilmot, the scientist who led the research team, she looked like any other normal sheep except that she was a little smaller than average. Sadly, she didn't live a very long life. She died at the age of 6 in 2003 due to a lung disease called pulmonary hypertension, which is common in sheep. She was the first of her kind, and she showed us that we can clone adult mammals. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think of Dolly the sheep? Do you think cloning is ethical? And what do you think Dolly would have said if she had known she was famous? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and you wouldn't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching. See ya. But she had lived a happy life, according to the people who worked with her, and she was a good mom to her 6 lambs. The people who created her said that they chose to name her Dolly because it was the first name that popped into their heads. But I've always thought it's because it sounds like Dolly, meaning she's a copy of her parents. Maybe one day we'll be able to bring back extinct animals like the dodo bird or the woolly mammoth by using cloning technology. Or maybe we'll be able to clone endangered animals to help them from going extinct. Or maybe we'll just clone more sheep. Who knows? Just kidding, sorta. But her name actually has nothing to do with her being a clone. Instead, she was created using a process called somatic cell nuclear transfer. Sound complicated? Well, it is. So let me break it down for you. Well, we cloned more sheep, of course, but we also cloned cows, pigs, cats, dogs, horses, and even a mule. But just because we can clone animals doesn't mean that There are a lot of ethical concerns surrounding cloning, including whether it is safe for the animals involved and whether it is right to mess with nature like that. There are also practical concerns, like the fact that cloning is expensive and time-consuming, and that most clones do you want to actually make it to term. In fact, out of all the attempts to clone Dolly, only 29 resulted in live births, which means that 90% of the time the procedure failed. On July 5th, 1996, a female sheep named Dolly was born in Edinburgh, Scotland at the Roslin Institute. Then you take the nucleus out of the egg cell, which contains the genetic material in the form of DNA. After that, you put the nucleus from the other cell into the empty egg. Then you give it a little electric shock to get things started. And finally, you let it grow into an embryo and then put it into a surrogate mother. So basically, you're taking the genetic material from one animal and putting it into another. But the cool thing is that because it grows into an embryo and is then carried by a surrogate, the clone isn't just a copy of the original animal. It also has some genetic variation like any other offspring. First off, you need 2 cells. One from the animal you want to clone and one from an egg cell donor. But why wouldn't they just use the genetic material from the mom sheep instead of going through all that trouble? Well, back then, scientists weren't sure if you could clone an adult animal using this method. They had successfully cloned embryos before, but never an adult. Also, they wanted to study how genes are expressed differently depending on what stage of life they were used in. They also wanted to prove that you didn't need an intact pair of chromosomes to make a healthy animal. This was important because if it were true, it would mean that you only needed half of a set of chromosomes to make an animal, which could have huge implications for endangered species, who only have a few members left and therefore a low chance of producing offspring. So after trying a bunch of times and implanting embryos into 40 surrogate mothers, Dolly was finally born. So what did Dolly look like and how long did she live? So now that we knew that cloning adult mammals was possible, what did we do next? next. But maybe one day cloning will become safer and easier and cheaper, and then we won't have to worry about these ethical concerns anymore. But no matter what, we can all agree that Dolly was a very special sheep